हेलो दोस्तों, वेलकम बैक टू माय चैनल। तो आज के वीडियो में हम देखने वाले हैं एनसीईआरटी क्लास 9 का पॉलिटी, जिसमें आज हम देखेंगे चैप्टर 3 जो कि है इलेक्ट्रल पॉलिटिक्स। तो शुरू करते हैं हमारा आज का चैप्टर। In chapter 1 we have seen that in a democracy it is neither possible nor necessary for people to govern directly. The most common form of democracy in our times is for the people to govern through their representatives. In this chapter, we will look at how these representatives are elected. We begin by understanding why elections are necessary and useful in a democracy. We try to understand how electoral competition among parties serves the people. We then go on to ask what makes an election democratic. The basic idea here is to distinguish democratic elections from non-democratic elections. The rest of the chapter tries to assess elections in India in the light of this yardstick. We take a look at each stage of elections, from the drawing of boundaries of different constituencies to the declaration of results. At each stage, we ask what should happen and what does happen in elections. Towards the end of the chapter, we turn to an assessment of whether elections in India are free and fair. Here we also examine the role of the Election Commission in ensuring free and fair elections. Why elections? Assembly election in Haryana. The time is after midnight. An expectant crowd sitting for the past 5 hours in a chowk of the town is waiting for its leader to come. The organizers assure and reassure the crowd that he would be here any moment. The crowd stands up whenever a passing vehicle comes that way. It arouses hope that he has come. The leader is Mr. Debilal, chief of the Haryana Sangharsh Samiti, who was to address a meeting in Karnal on Thursday night. The 76-year-old leader is a very busy man these days. His day starts at 8 a.m. and ends after 11 p.m. He had already addressed 9 election meetings since morning, been constantly addressing public meetings for the past 23 months and preparing for this election. This newspaper report is about the state assembly election in Haryana in 1987. The state had been ruled by a Congress party-led government since 1982. Chaudhry Debilal, then an opposition leader, led a movement called Nyaya Youth Struggle for Justice and formed a new party, Lok Dal. His party joined other opposition parties to form a front against the Congress in the election campaign. Debilal said that his party won the elections. His government would waive the loans of farmers and small businessmen. He promised that this would be the first action of his government. The people were unhappy with the existing government. They were also attracted by Debilal's promise. So when elections were held, they voted overwhelmingly in favor of Lok Dal and its allies. Lok Dal and its partners owned 76 out of 90 seats in the state assembly. Lok Dal alone owned 60 seats and thus had a clear majority in the assembly. The Congress could win only 5 seats. Once the election results were announced, the sitting chief minister resigned. The newly elected members of legislative assemblies of Lok Dal chose Debilal as their leader. The governor invited Debilal to be the new chief minister. 3 days after the election results were declared, he became the chief minister. As soon as he became the chief minister, his government issued a government order waiving the outstanding loans of farmers, agricultural laborers, and small businessmen. His party ruled the state for 4 years. The next elections were held in 1991, but this time his party did not win popular support. The Congress won the election and formed the government. Why do we need elections? Elections take place regularly in any democracy. There are more than 100 countries in the world in which elections take place to choose people's representatives. We also read that elections are held in many countries that are not democratic. But why do we need elections? Let us try to imagine a democracy without elections. A rule of the people is possible without any elections if all the people can sit together every day and take all the decisions. But as we have already seen in chapter 1, this is not possible in any large community. Nor is it possible for everyone to have the time and knowledge to take decisions on all matters. Therefore, in most democracies, people rule through their representatives. Is there a democratic way of selecting representatives without election? Let us think of a place where representatives are selected on the basis of age and experience, or a place where they are chosen on the basis of education or knowledge. There could be some difficulty in deciding on who is more experienced or knowledgeable. But let us say that the people can resolve these difficulties. Clearly, such a place does not require elections. But can we call this place a democracy? How do we find out if the people like their representatives or not? How do we ensure that these representatives rule as per the wishes of the people? How to make sure that those who the people don't like do not remain their representatives? This requires a mechanism by which people can choose the representatives at regular intervals and change them if they wish to do so. This mechanism is called election. Therefore, elections are considered essential in our times for any representative democracy. In an election, the voters make many choices. They can choose who will make laws for them. They can choose who will form the government and take major decisions. They can choose the party whose policies will guide the government and lawmaking. What makes an election democratic? Elections can be held in many ways. All democratic countries hold elections. But most non-democratic countries also hold some kind of elections. How do we distinguish democratic election from any other election? We have discussed this question briefly in chapter 1. We discussed many examples of countries where elections are held, but they can't really be called democratic elections. Let us recall what we learned there and start with a simple list of the minimum conditions of a democratic election. First, everyone should be able to choose. This means that everyone should have one vote and every vote should have equal value. Second, there should be something to choose from. Parties and candidates should be free to contest elections and should offer some real choice to the voters. Third, the choice should be offered at regular intervals. Elections must be held regularly after every few years. Fourth, the candidate preferred by the people should get elected. Fifth, elections should be conducted in a free and fair manner where people can choose as they really wish. This might look very simple and easy conditions, but there are many countries where these are not fulfilled. In this chapter, we will apply these conditions to the elections held in our own country to see if we can call these democratic elections. Is it good to have political competition? Elections are thus about political competition. This competition takes various forms. The most obvious form is the competition among political parties. At the constituency level, it takes the form of competition among several candidates. If there is no competition, elections will become pointless. But is it good to have political competition? Clearly, an electoral competition has many demerits. It creates a sense of disunity and factionalism in every locality. You would have heard of people complaining of party politics in your locality. Different political parties and leaders often level allegations against one another. Parties and candidates often use dirty tricks to win elections. Some people say that this pressure to win electoral fights does not allow sensible long-term policies to be formulated. Some good people who may wish to serve the country do not enter this arena. They do not like the idea of being dragged into unhealthy competition. Our constitution makers were aware of these problems, yet they opted for free competition in elections as the way to select the future leaders. They did so because this system works better in the long run. In an ideal world, all political leaders know what is good for the people and are motivated only by a desire to serve them. Political competition is not necessary in such an ideal world, but that is not what happens in real life. Political leaders all over the world, like all other professionals, are motivated by a desire to advance their political careers. They want to remain in power or get power and positions for themselves. They may wish to serve the people as well, but it is risky to depend entirely on their sense of duty. Besides, even when they wish to serve the people, they may not know what is required to do so, or their ideas may not match what the people really want. How do we deal with this real life situation? One way is to try and improve the knowledge and character of political leaders. The other and more realistic way is to set up a system where political leaders are rewarded for serving the people and punished for not doing so. Who decides this reward or punishment? The simple answer is the people. This is what electoral competition does. Regular electoral competition provides incentives to political parties and leaders. They know that if they raise issues that people want to be raised, their popularity and chances of victory will increase in the next elections. But if they fail to satisfy the voters with their work, they will not be able to win again. So, if a political party is motivated only by desire to win power, then it will be forced to serve the people. This is a bit like the way market works. Even if a shopkeeper is interested only in his profit, he is forced to give good service to the customers. If he does not, the customer will go to some other shop. Similarly, political competition may cause divisions and some ugliness, but it finally helps to force political parties and leaders to serve the people. What is our system of elections? Can we say that Indian elections are democratic? To answer this question, let us take a look at how elections are held in India. Lok Sabha and Vidhan Sabha assembly elections are held regularly after every 5 years. After 5 years, the term of all the elected representatives come to an end. The Lok Sabha or Vidhan Sabha stands dissolved. Elections are held in all constituencies at the same time, either on the same day or within a few days. This is called a general election. Sometimes election is held only for one constituency to fill the vacancy caused by death or resignation of a member. This is called a by-election. In this chapter, we will focus on general elections. Electoral constituencies. You read about the people of the Haryana electing 90 MLAs. You may have wondered how they did that. Did every person in Haryana vote for all the 90 MLAs? You perhaps know that this is not the case. In our country, we follow an area-based system of representation. The country is divided into different areas for purpose of elections. These areas are called electoral constituencies. The voters who live in an area elect one representative. For Lok Sabha elections, the country is divided into 543 constituencies. The representative elected from each constituency is called a member of parliament or an MP. One of the features of a democratic election is that every vote should have equal value. That is why our constitution requires that each constituency should have a roughly equal population living within it. Similarly, each state is divided into a specific number of assembly constituencies. In this case, the elected representative is called the member of legislative assembly or an MLA. Each parliamentary constituency has within it several assembly constituencies. The same principle applies for panchayat and municipal elections. Each village or town is divided into several wards. that are like constituencies. Each ward elects one member of the village or the urban local body. Sometimes these constituencies are counted as seats, for each constituency represents one seat in the assembly. When we say that Lok Dal owns 60 seats in Haryana, it means that candidates of Lok Dal own in 60 assembly constituencies in the state, and thus Lok Dal had 60 MLAs in the state assembly. Reserved constituencies. Our constitution entitles every citizen to elect her or his representative and to be elected as a representative. The constitution makers, however, were worried that in an open electoral competition, certain weaker sections may not stand a good chance to get elected to the Lok Sabha and the state legislative assemblies. They may not have the required resources, education, and contacts to contest and win elections against others. Those who are influential and resourceful may prevent them from winning elections. If that happens, our parliament and assemblies would be deprived of the voice of a significant section of our population. That would make our democracy less representative and less democratic. So, the makers of our constitution thought of a special system of reserved constituencies for the weaker sections. Some constituencies are reserved for people who belong to the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. In a SC reserved constitution, only someone who belongs to the scheduled caste can stand for election. Similarly, only those belonging to the scheduled tribes can contest an election from a constituency reserved for ST. Currently in Lok Sabha, 84 seats are reserved for the scheduled caste and 47 for the scheduled tribes, as on 26 January 2019. This number is in proportion to their share in the total population. Thus, the reserved seats for SC and ST do not take away the legitimate share of any other social groups. This system of reservation was extended later to other weaker sections at the district and local level. In many states, seats in rural, panchayat and urban municipalities and corporation local bodies are now reserved for other backward classes, OBC, as well. However, the proportion of seats reserved varies from state to state. Similarly, 1/3 of the seats are reserved in rural and urban local bodies for women candidates. Voters list. Once the constituencies are decided, the next step is to decide who can and who cannot vote. This decision cannot be left to anyone till the last day. In a democratic election, the list of those who are eligible to vote is prepared much before the election and given to everyone. This list is officially called the electoral roll and is commonly known as the voters list. This is an important step, for it is linked to the first condition of a democratic election. Everyone should get an equal opportunity to choose representatives. Earlier we read about the principle of universal adult franchise. In practice, it means that everyone should have one vote and each vote should have equal value. No one should be denied the right to vote without a good reason. Different citizens differ from one another in many ways. Some are rich, some are poor, some are highly educated, some are not so educated or not educated at all. Some are kind, others are not so kind, but all of them are human beings with their own needs and views. That is why all of them deserve to have an equal say in decisions that affect them. In our country, all the citizens aged 18 years and above can vote in an election. Every citizen has the right to vote regardless of his or her caste, religion or gender. Some criminals and persons with unsound mind can can be denied the right to vote, but only in rare situations. It is the responsibility of the government to get the names of all the eligible voters put on the voters list. As new persons attain voting age, names are added to the voters list. Names of those who move out of a place or those who are dead are deleted. A complete revision of the list takes place every 5 years. This is done to ensure that it remains up to date. In the last few years, a new system of election photo identity card EPIC has been introduced. The government has tried to give this card to every person on the voters list. The voters are required to carry this card when they go out to vote so that no one can vote for someone else. But the card is not yet compulsory for voting. For voting, the voters can show many other proofs of identity like the ration card or the driving license. Nomination of candidates. We noted above that in a democratic elections, people should have a real choice. This happens only when there are almost no restrictions on anyone to contest an election. This is what our system provides. Anyone who can be a voter can also become a candidate in elections. The only difference is that in order to be a candidate, the minimum age is 25 years, while it is only 18 years for being a voter. There are some other restrictions on criminals, etc. But these apply in very extreme cases. Political party nominate their candidates who get the party symbol and support. Party's nomination is often called party ticket. Every person who wishes to contest an election has to fill a nomination form and give some money as security deposit. Recently, a new system of declaration has been introduced on direction from the Supreme Court. Every candidate has to make a legal declaration giving full details of serious criminal cases pending against the candidate, details of the assets and liabilities of the candidate and his or her family, and educational qualifications of the candidate. This information has to be made public. This provides an opportunity to the voters to make the decision on the basis of the information provided by the candidates. Educational qualification for candidates. Why is there no educational qualification for holding such an important position when some kind of educational qualification is needed for any other job in the country? Education qualifications are not relevant to all kinds of jobs. The relevant qualification for selection to the Indian cricket team, for example, is not the attainment of educational degrees but the ability to play cricket well. Similarly, the relevant qualification for being an MLA or an MP is the ability to understand people's concerns, problems, and to represent their interests. Whether they can do so or not is examined by lakhs of examiners. They are voters after every 5 years. Even if education was relevant, it should be left to the people to decide how much importance they give to educational qualification. In our country, putting an educational qualification would go against the spirit of democracy for yet another reason. It would mean depriving a majority of the country's citizens the right to contest elections. If, for example, a graduate degree like BA, BCom, or BSc was made compulsory for candidates, more than 90% of the citizens will become ineligible to contest elections. एक इलेक्शन फॉर्म का फोटो दिया है. Election campaign. The main purpose of election is to give people a chance to choose the representatives, the government and the policies they prefer. Therefore, it is necessary to have a free and open discussion about who is a better representative, which party will make a better government, or what is a good policy. This is what happens during election campaigns. In our country, such campaigns take place for a 2-week period between the announcement of the final list of candidates and the date of polling. During this period, the candidates contact their voters. Political leaders address election meetings and political parties mobilize their supporters. This is also the period when newspapers and television news are full of election related stories and debates. But election campaign is not limited to these 2 weeks only. Political parties start preparing for elections months before they actually take place. In election campaigns, political parties try to focus public attention on some big issues. They want to attract the public to that issue and get them to vote for their party on that basis. Let us look at some of the successful slogans given by different political parties in various elections. The Congress party led by Indira Gandhi gave the slogan of Garibi Hatao, remove poverty in the Lok Sabha elections of 1971. The party promised to reorient all the policies of the government to remove poverty from the country. Save Democracy was the slogan given by Janata Party under the leadership of Jai Prakash Narayan. In the Lok Sabha elections held in 1977, the party promised to undo the excesses committed during emergency and restore civil liberties. The Left Front used the slogan of Land to the Tiller in the West Bengal Assembly elections held in 1977. Protect the self-right of Telugus was the slogan used by N.T. Ramarao, the leader of the Telugu Desam party in Andhra Pradesh Assembly in the 1983. In a democracy, it is best to leave political parties and candidates free to conduct their election campaigns the way they want to, but it is sometimes necessary to regulate campaigns to ensure that every political party and candidate gets a fair and equal chance to compete. According to our election law, no party or candidate can bribe or threaten voters, appeal to them in the name of caste or religion, use government resources for election campaign, and spend more than rupees 25 lakh in a constituency for a Lok Sabha election and rupees 10 lakh in a constituency in an assembly election. If they do so, their election can be rejected by the court even after they have been declared elected. In addition to the laws, all the political parties in our country have agreed to a model code of conduct for election campaigns. According to this, no party or candidate can use any place of worship for election propaganda, use government vehicles, aircrafts, and officials for elections, and once elections are announced, ministers shall not lay foundation stones of any projects, take any big policy decision, or make any promises of providing public facilities. Are the elections too expensive for our country? A large amount of money is spent in conducting elections in India. For instance, the government spent about Rs 3,500 crores in conducting Lok Sabha elections in 2014. That works out to about Rs 40 per person on the voters list. The amount spent by the parties and candidates was more than what the government spent. Roughly speaking, the expenditure made by government, parties, and candidates was around Rs 30,000 crores or Rs 500 per voter. Some people say that elections are a burden on our people, that our poor country cannot afford to hold elections once every 5 years. Let us compare this expenditure with some other figures. In 2005, our government decided to buy 6 nuclear submarines from France. Each submarine cost about Rs 3,000 crores. Delhi hosted the Commonwealth Games in 2010. The estimate for its cost is around Rs 20,000 crores. Are the elections too expensive? You decide. Earlier, the voters used to indicate who they wanted to vote for by putting a stamp on the ballot paper. A ballot paper is a sheet of paper on which the names of the contesting candidate along with party names and symbols are listed. Nowadays, electoral Electronic voting machines (EVM) are used to record votes. The machine shows the name of the candidates and the party symbols. Independent candidates too have their own symbols allotted by Election Commission. All that the voter has to do is to press the button against the name of the candidate she wants to give her vote. Once the polling is over, all the EVMs are sealed and taken to a secure place. A few days later, on a fixed date, all the EVMs from a constituency are opened and the votes secured by each candidate are counted. The agents of all candidates are present there to ensure that the counting is done properly. The candidate who secures the highest number of votes from a constituency is declared elected. In a general election, usually the counting of votes is in all the constituencies take place at the same time on the same day. Television channels, radio and newspapers report this event. Within a few hours of counting, all the results are declared and it becomes clear as who will form the next government. What makes election in India democratic? We get to read a lot about unfair practices in elections. Newspapers and television reports often refer to such allegations. Most of these reports are about the following: inclusion of false names and exclusion of genuine names in the voters list, misuse of government facilities and officials by the ruling party, excessive use of money by race candidates and big parties, and intimidation of voters and rigging on the polling day. Many of these reports are correct. We feel unhappy when we read or see such reports, but fortunately, they are not on such a scale so as to defeat the very purpose of elections. This becomes clear if we ask a basic question: can a party win an election and come to power not because it has popular support but through electoral malpractices? This is a vital question. Let us carefully examine various aspects of this question. Independent Election Commission. One simple way of checking whether elections are fair or not is to look at who conducts the election. Are they independent of the government, or can the government or the ruling party influence or pressurize them? Do they have enough powers to be able to conduct free and fair elections? Do they actually use this power? The answer to all these questions is quite positive for our country. In our country, elections are conducted by an independent and very powerful election commission. It enjoys the same kind of independence that the judiciary enjoys. The chief election commissioner is appointed by the President of India, but once appointed, the chief election commissioner is not answerable to the President or the government. Even if the ruling party or the government does not like what the commission does, it is virtually impossible for it to remove the CEC. Very few election commissions in the world have such wide-ranging powers as the Election Commission of India. EC takes decision on every aspect of conduct and control of elections, from the announcement of elections to the declaration of results. It implements the code of conduct and punishes any candidate or party that violates it. During the election period, the EC can order the government to follow some guidelines to prevent use and misuse of governmental power to enhance its chances to win elections or to transfer some government officials. When on election duty, government officers work under the control of the EC and not the government. In the last 25 years or so, the Election Commission has begun to exercise all its power and even expand them. It is very common now for the Election Commission to reprimand the government and administration for their lapses. When election officials come to the opinion that polling was not fair in some booths or even an entire constituency, they order a repoll. The ruling parties often do not like what the EC does, but they have to obey. This would not have happened if the EC was not independent and powerful. Popular participation. Another way to check the quality of the election process is to see whether people participate in it with enthusiasm. If the election process is not free or fair, people will not continue to participate in the exercise. Now read this chart and draw some conclusions about participation in India. इसमें दिखा है voter turnout in India and the UK. People's participation in election is usually measured by voter turnout figures. Turnout indicates the percent of eligible voters who actually cast their vote. Over the last 50 years, the turnout in Europe and North America has declined. In India, the turnout has either remained stable or actually gone up. ये है वोटर टर्नआउट इन इंडिया एंड यूएस बाय सोशल ग्रुप्स 2004. इसमें दिखाया है इलेक्ट्रल पॉलिटिक्स का इफेक्ट, और ये है those who participated in any election related activity in India. In India, the poor, illiterate and underprivileged people vote in larger proportion as compared to the rich and privileged section. This is in contrast to Western democracies. For example, in the United States of America, poor people, African Americans and Hispanics vote much less than the rich and the white people. Common people in India attach a lot of importance to elections. They feel that through elections they can bring pressure on political parties to adopt policies and programs favorable to them. They also feel that their vote matters in the way things are run in the country. The interest of voters in election-related activities has been increasing over the years. During the 2004 elections, more than one-third voters took part in campaign-related activities. More than half of the people identify themselves as being close to one or the other political party. 1 out of every 7 voters is a member of a political party. Acceptance of election outcome. One final test of the free and fairness of election has in the outcome itself. If elections are not free or fair, the outcome always favors the powerful. In such a situation, the ruling parties do not lose elections. Usually the losing party does not accept the outcome of a rigged election. The outcome of India's election speaks for itself. The ruling parties routinely lose elections in India, both at the national and state level. In fact, in every 2 out of the 3 elections held in the last 25 years, the ruling party lost. In the US, an incumbent or sitting elected representative rarely loses an election. In India, about half of the sitting MPs or MLAs lose elections. Candidates who are known to have spent a lot of money on buying votes and those with known criminal connections often lose elections. Barring very few disputed elections, the electoral outcomes are usually accepted as people's verdict by the defeated party. Challenges to free and fair elections. All this leads to a simple conclusion. Elections in India are basically free and fair. The party that wins an election and forms government does so because people have chosen it over its rivals. This may not be true for every constituency. A few candidates may win purely on the basis of money, power, and unfair means. But the overall verdict of a general election still reflects popular preference. There are very few exceptions to this rule in the last 60 years in our country. This is what makes Indian elections democratic. Yet the picture looks different if we ask deeper questions. Are people's preferences based on real knowledge? Are the voters getting a real choice? Is election really level playing field for everyone? Can an ordinary citizen hope to win elections? Questions of this kind bring Limitations and challenges of Indian elections to our attention. This include candidates and parties with a lot of money may not be sure of their victory, but they do enjoy a big and unfair advantage over smaller parties and independents. In some parts of the country, candidates with criminal connection have been able to push others out of the electoral race and to secure a ticket from major parties. Some families tend to dominate political parties. Tickets are distributed to relatives from these families. Very often, elections offer little choice to ordinary citizens, for both the major parties are quite similar to each other, both in policies and practice. Smaller parties and independent candidates suffer a huge disadvantage compared to bigger parties. These challenges exist not just in India but also in many established democracies. These deeper issues are a matter of concern for those who believe in democracy. That is why citizens, social activists, and organizations have been demanding reforms in our electoral system. Can you think of some reform? What can an ordinary citizen do to face these challenges? तो ये है इस चैप्टर का ग्लॉसरी और ये है इस चैप्टर का एक्सरसाइज। तो इसी के साथ हमारा आज का ये चैप्टर कंप्लीट होता है। तो अगर आप चैनल पर नए हैं तो चैनल को सब्सक्राइब कर दीजिए और नोटिफिकेशन आइकन पर क्लिक कर दीजिए ताकि आपको सारी वीडियोस के अपडेट्स मिल सकें। और अगर आपको वीडियो अच्छा लगे तो लाइक कर दीजिए, साथ ही अपने दोस्तों के साथ शेयर कीजिए ताकि उन्हें भी हेल्प हो सके। तो इसमें एक नेशनल वोटर्स डे प्लेस भी दिया है और कुछ पिक्चर्स दिया है, आप ये भी देख सकते हैं। तो हमारा आज का ये वीडियो यहीं तक था। थैंक यू, थैंक्स फॉर वॉचिंग।